Hi, Outlook. Okay, so today we're talking about advanced contacts. And you've worked with contacts before in previous chapters. You learned how to create a contact and all the different ways that you can create contacts more efficiently, more effectively. In this chapter, you're learning about taking contacts that exist perhaps in another email account. Let's say, for example, that you've got an old Hotmail account or a Yahoo Mail account where you've got a lot of contacts already listed. If you want to take those contacts out of those email accounts and bring them into your current Outlook environment, well, Outlook has a feature that assists you with doing that. You can also take your contacts from one Outlook account and take it into another Outlook account. Let's say, for example, that you've got some contacts at work and you want to bring those contacts with you. Well, you can use the import-export feature in Outlook to do that sort of taking along of contacts. So we're going to start off by going into the Backstage or File menu. And in that File menu, we're going to see the Open and Export link here. So from there, on the right hand side, we see all the different ways that we can open our files. We want to go to the Import Export option. Alright, and when you do that, you'll get the Import and Export Wizard. Now the wizard makes it easy for you to follow step-by-step instructions for performing an action. Now we've got lots of actions that we can perform here. What we're talking about today is importing from another program or file. So we're going to assume that at some point you're going to take the contacts from your old email account, for example Hotmail, and you're going to export them into, for example, what we call a CSV file or a comma separated value file. And you want to get that information again out of the old email account, bring it into Outlook, so you have to export it from there. We're going to now assume we've got that file and we're going to import it into Outlook. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. Now when I do that, it takes me to the second screen here, which allows me to select the file type to import from. Now you see two things listed here. We've got the comma separated values, which looks very much like an Excel spreadsheet, and then we've got the Outlook data file, the .pst. So the PST file is native to Outlook, and that's when you want to transfer from one Outlook account to another Outlook account. Alright, in this case we're going to use the comma separated values, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. The next portion allows me to select wherever my file is located that I want to import. So I would click on Browse and I would navigate to wherever that's located. In this case, my file is going to be located in the Documents folder. And I'm going to be choosing today the Spellman Pacific Reps demo file that I prepared beforehand. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and you'll notice here that it does indeed say comma separated value. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click on OK. And then from there, I get to look at the different options for importing my contacts. Now the first option here is to replace duplicates with items imported. So that means that if Outlook notices that you've got the same name here and it has information to bring in, then it's just going to replace whatever's already in the folder here with whatever you're bringing in. Again, that's assuming that the contact already exists in the folder that you're going to choose. The second option is to allow duplicates to be created. Now, sometimes it is appropriate to allow a duplicate to be created. Let's say, for example, that you've got two Maria Sanchez's that perhaps has two different businesses and you want the information for both businesses to be imported even though it's one person there. Well, you could choose to allow for those duplicates to be created. Then we've got the last option, do not import duplicate items. If you know that you do not want information to be brought in twice, right, then you would choose the do not import duplicate items. In the case of today, I'm just going to choose the allow duplicates to be created and then go forward from there. But again, you would choose whichever option is right for you as you are importing your contacts. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. The next step asks me to select the destination folder. In this case, I chose a folder, or I created, I should say, a folder inside of my contacts folder. Now, as I'm going through, you'll notice that I've got my regular contacts folder here. I've got a practice folder that I had pre-created and another Spellman Pacific folder that I had created. So I'm going to choose Spellman Pacific because Spellman Pacific is are the types of contacts that I am actually importing. So my folder name corresponds to the types of contacts that I'm bringing in. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And the next step here tells you the following actions will be performed. It's going to import the records from my CSV file into my Outlook file. Alright, now I want you to take a moment and I want you to stop because we're not finished yet. Even though in the wizard it says finish here, we have one big step we still have to take. Now, let me explain why. In your old accounts, let's say for example Yahoo, each provider creates their own database of information, and they're going to use labels that are appropriate for them. So whereas in perhaps a Gmail account, it might say first name, it might just say first, right? Or it might just say name. We know what all three of those things mean, right? But in Outlook, it's looking for a very specific thing. So if it's called name, for example, in Gmail, and it's called first name in Outlook, if you try to import that information, when the importing process takes place, there is no label for it to place the information in. So the labels have to be mapped or matched, right? So from the file into the Outlook environment. So we have to first click on Map Custom Fields, right? So we're going to be mapping the fields here to match them from the old file into the new environment. So I'm going to click on Map Custom Fields here, and this is what we see. On the left-hand side, we have the from, the field that's coming from my comma-separated value. That's the file that I'm importing from. On the right-hand side, we have the Microsoft Outlook fields, right? So, and that's going to be being imported into the Small and Pacific folder. So again, we have to tell Outlook what to put the information into, right? So on the left-hand side, you notice it does indeed say first, right? That's our first field here. Well, I'm going to look on the right-hand side for first, right? I'm looking over here for first, and all I see is name. At this point, there is nothing here for it to import the information into. Now, you'll also notice that next to name, there's this little plus sign, so I'm going to go ahead and expand that. And even though in my value, in my CSV file, it's called first, that's the field name, in Outlook, it's actually called first name. Right? So how am I going to tell Outlook, hey, Outlook, I want you to take whatever's in the first field and put it into the first name field? Well, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to not let go, and I'll drag it all the way over into first name, right on top of that, right? And you'll notice that when I did that, I have now told Outlook that first name is equivalent to first. So take the information that's in first and put it into first name. Okay, so that's my first field. Now, as I'm going through, my second field on the left is last. On the right-hand side, there is no just last field. It's called last name. So I have to take my last field here and put it right over last name to say, hey, Outlook, map last name field or last field into last name. Okay, the third one listed on the left-hand side is company. And I'm going to look on the right-hand side, and what do you notice? Well, it looks like company was already mapped for you. Why? Well, because those two field names happen to correspond. They're exactly the same. Outlook knows what to do with that information. Okay, so we look on the left-hand side now. The next field here is job. All right, so I'm looking for job here on the right-hand side, and do you notice job? Well, I actually noticed job title. So even though it's called job in our file, in Outlook it's called job title. So I'm going to take it, click on it, I won't let go, and I'll bring it right over and on top of job title, and there it is, job. Okay, the next field on the left is street, and if I scroll down, I'm not going to see street, right? There's a lot of fields here that we can map to, and street is not going to be one of them. These are my business contacts that I'm importing into my Outlook file here. So I know that these are business contacts, so I'm going to open up the business address fields. Right? This one's called street on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side in Outlook, it's actually called business street. So I'd have to take my street field on the left-hand side, and I'd have to take it and drag it right into the business street field. And then there's city. On the right-hand side, it's not called just city, it's called business city. So I have to take my field and I have to drag it over to the right-hand side. Okay, I'm not done yet though. There's still state, so I'm going to take my state and I'm going to bring it over to the business state and release it there. Okay, that's mapped now. Then I've got zip code, and I don't see a zip code field, do you? We don't. But we do know that postal code is the same thing as a zip code. So we're going to take the zip code and say, you know what, even though it's zip code in my file, it's actually called business postal code in Outlook. Okay, then I've got my country, and even though it's country on the left-hand side in Outlook, it's called business country, right? So you'll notice that as I'm mapping them, it tells you where these are being mapped from and where they're being mapped to. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. I've got one last one. It's called email, and email happens to be, I'm going to keep scrolling here all the way down. It's a little bit further down in your list of information here, and there it is, email. So you'll notice that there is an expansion button there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it's called email on the left-hand side, right? Email address on the right-hand side. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to directly put it over. Now, why am I not putting it here? Because that's the category name. I want to put it into the field instead. Okay, so I've got my email address and I don't have any more fields on the left-hand side, so I'm done with the mapping process, right? So we mapped our custom fields here. We were able to match them from the left-hand side to the right-hand side so that Outlook knows where to import the information into. Now, had we not done this, had we not mapped our fields, then we would have a whole bunch of contacts with missing information. In this particular case, all we would see would be the company name because that would be the only field that it recognized. Okay, now once I've done all of the mapping, then I can click on OK. Right, so I finished that and it takes me back here to the last part of the wizard process. Now that I've done the mapping of custom fields, I can click on the Finish button and it'll take just a few minutes for it to finish. Okay, actually seconds, because I didn't have too many contacts there, and depending on how many contacts you have, it might take a little bit longer. But you'll notice that nothing changed in this interface. Uh-oh, the contacts weren't changed, except that I didn't import it into contacts, right? We chose the Spellman Pacific folder to import that information into. And as you're looking at your information, right, so keep looking through here, you'll notice that you've got all of your information, and look at that. We have the first and the last name, we've got the company, we've got their title, we've got their email address, we've got the full and complete address, right? So there is no missing information because we were able to go in and map each one of the fields. Now, in your process, if you forget to map a custom field, even if you brought in all of the fields except for that one that you forgot, you're going to notice the information is missing. In those cases, instead of going in and trying to fix each individual record, what I would suggest to you is that if you make a mistake in the importing process, if for example you forget to map a field or a few fields, then I would suggest that you delete the entire folder and all of its contents, recreate the folder and start the mapping process again. Because this is a little bit of a tedious process, right? It's very detailed. So if you make a mistake, just start from scratch so that you don't have to go back and figure out where the mistake was made. Okay, so we're talking about the importing process, and it's incredibly important for you to match your destination fields, right? Because when you map those fields, when you tell Outlook where to put in the information, then you're essentially making sure that all the information that you need from your records is actually coming into your Outlook account. All right, I hope you have some fun as you guys are importing your contact records into your newly created folders.